With digital transformation, you got to upskill your people. They've been working X amount of years or term one way, and you're saying, we're going to implement a new ERP system as an example, and we have to make you work a different way. Changing people's hearts and minds, not the easiest thing, right? So not only are you trying to change behavior, you're trying to change hearts, you got to change skill.
Welcome to 5 Minutes, your quick dive into the wide-ranging world of insurance, technology, and leadership. I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'll be your guide as we explore these topics that are transforming not just the insurance industry, but the business world at large. Along with sharing observations I've made over the span of my career in insurance, technology, and operations, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in business and leadership. Whether you're a seasoned executive or a rising star, an industry expert, or just curious about how technology is revolutionizing insurance, this is your perfect spot for your weekly dose of insights. This is 5 Minutes. Just give me a play-by-play of your career, man, and what got you to where you ended up as a insurance carrier CIO.
Yeah, sure. So career is actually interesting. I started out in engineering. So I went to Georgia Tech down in Atlanta. So late 90s, I just jumped into IT. It was a dot-com boom, if you remember that time.
Yeah.
Had the opportunity to get a job as an undergrad and grad because, we were poor and we needed money and we just were building computers in our rooms, right? So got
Yeah.
into technology that way, and then knew enough that after graduation, I was able to choose between engineering or IT, and took IT and just ran with it.
Love it.
I would say the first half of my career, 15 years, was really in managed services. So I was working in IBM Global Services, the Lou Gerstner days. It was we were building that plane while it was flying. But it was
Right.
incredible experience working with global teams, delivering infrastructure application, security services worldwide. It's pretty awesome. And it gave me a really different perspective because my second half of my career turned more corporate, internal IT,
Mhm.
et cetera. But I had this really different point of view and lens, right, as to how these massive companies that we all work with today, how do they do their thing, right? How do they do
Sure.
their job? So, um, my technology career started in managed services, turned corporate, did a lot of IT stuff, infrastructure, security, ran PMO,
Mhm.
architecture, and then eventually became the CIO running all the enterprise technology. So it's been great.
Yeah, awesome, man. One of the things that occurs to me is you've got a kind of an interesting perspective with your consulting experience. What role did being a consultant first play as you took on a corporate role as a CIO? Talk to me a little bit about that kind of internal
Yeah.
consulting.
Yeah, the empathy, right? So
Yeah.
when I took that, the corporate roles, I really understood what it took to deliver. It's hard, right?
Hmm.
But it helped me with negotiations. Helped me with commercial aspects, right? Because been there, done that sort of thing.
Yep.
But also, delivery. You know, to be an IT leader in a corporate environment, you've got to be relentless with delivery. You've got to be able to pay
Sure.
attention to the details, and you got to push hard. And when you're in those massive external firms that we all know of, they are doing that. They've got a
Hmm.
massive amount of people, but their processes, their governance, their frameworks, and their execution has to be top notch, right? Because at the end of the day, that's their business. That's
Right.
their business, right? And they've got to be
Right.
able to hit high marks on execution to reduce their costs, et cetera, and get good margins. So it really taught you that.
Got it. Yeah, it's funny because I'm on the other side of this thing. I'm like I flipped it, right? So entire career in industry, and now all of a sudden I'm in this consulting role. And Hosea, like I'm sitting here and with a newfound appreciation for learning the skill of consulting. I think the
Yeah.
only saving grace is that I've worked with consultants for 25 years of my career, so I kind of know what to expect from a client's perspective. But being on the other side of the table, Jose, man, it's hard. I give those guys a
Yeah.
lot of credit.
Yeah, that's right. But it's awesome that you have
Yep.
that experience as well, because now you understand what the
Right.
corporate CIOs are going through, and the
For sure.
value you bring to the table now is second to none. I didn't have that
Right. Right.
experience
Right.
in my first round of consulting. Now I do. So
Hmm.
allowing myself to have that experience on both sides, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all
No,
about
for sure.
empathy. It's about the ability to put it in terms that your client will understand, right? As a
Agreed.
consultant.
Agreed. One of the challenges that I think we face, Jose, whether we're on the consulting side or whether we're sitting in that CIO seat, but as it relates to the technology side of things, how do you think about aligning the IT strategy to business goals? It seems like there's always so much misalignment there, and
I
and
agree.
it's
Yeah.
always a challenge around measurement, around delivery, such that you understand what IT is doing that is inuring to the benefit of the business objective. How do you bridge that in your experience?
Yeah, it's tough, but I think the first thing we have to do as technology leaders is remember it's about the business. It's
Hmm.
all about it's not about us. It's about the business first, the products, the growth opportunities, client retention, revenue opportunities, right, et cetera. So let's remember that first and foremost. So when we go into our strategy sessions and we're building on our strategy, don't do it alone,
Right.
right? Don't do it in a vacuum. Bring the business along with you, their stakeholders, get their feedback, get their input. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing I think we have to remember is we do have accountability and responsibility to manage that technology house, right? So while we're
Right.
enabling the tech business strategy, while we're helping them grow, listen, we have a foundation we got to maintain because there's risk if we don't.
Hmm.
And that's our responsibility. And
Right.
we have to really communicate well.
Hmm.
So when you say the challenges, I agree with you. The major challenges of alignment and strategy, but a lot of times it comes down to, as technology leaders, we're not communicating as effectively as we need to help them
Right.
understand why. And
Right.
it's not a why from technology sense only. It's mainly a why from a business sense. Why is this risk in cybersecurity going to impact the business long term? Why is this risk in infrastructure, legacy, technology going to impact our ability to fill in the blank, grow, et cetera? And I think
Sure.
as technology leaders, we have to learn how to communicate better,
Yep.
right? Simply, right? In terms of the business understands, and put your technology hat aside and just think like a business leader. Um, I think that's a lot of the reasons, Miguel, why we have a lot of times these challenges of misalignment or conflict, et cetera, because we have needs. We technology
Hmm.
leaders have needs,
Hmm.
but A, let's remember we're business leaders first. And B, let's communicate our needs in ways they understand because everyone's heart is always in the right place. Sometimes it's just a lack of understanding.
Sure. Yeah, double click on that for me, Jose. You talk about, and I think it's intuitive when you start thinking about that collaboration and that need to make sure that you're bridging the IT and those business goals. I get that piece. You said something to me that's really interesting, though, when you start talking about the responsibility that we have as IT leaders to care for that infrastructure. There's obviously there's pieces of security in there that we've got to
Yeah.
think about. There's think pieces of serviceability, all of that. How do you communicate when you use that term communicate and communicate the why? How do you communicate those IT needs in terms that the business understands and supports?
The key point is keeping it really simple. First of
Hmm.
all, include them at the table, right?
Yep.
Do not try to create an IT strategy in a silo. Or
Right.
even sometimes you think that creating it by yourself and your team and your larger team is enough. It's not enough.
Right.
So include the lines of business leaders in there because they have perspectives, they have feedback, etc. Not only
Got
that,
it.
you'll get them to accept it more and they'll
Hmm.
actually they'll actually evangelize it if they're part of it, if they feel like they're part of it. So I
Sure.
think I think that's the first part. The second part is, like I said, keeping it simple. I think Elon Musk says something of the nature of, when you're in a room, drop the big words. Don't try to talk as simple as possible. Don't try to be the smartest guy in the room, right?
Right.
Sounding all right. So keep it as simple as possible. And in terms that everybody understands. So for example, at my last place, when we created our digital strategy, we
Hmm.
literally called it a digital cake. And we talked about the layers of the cake, the foundation of
Hmm.
data architectures, your bottom layer, your top layers, your layers of portals and experience, and the middle layer is, the business operations. And guess what? The layers of cream in the middle, that's your API, right?
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
and it's silly, but it's simple. And
Makes
when you
perfect
drop a
sense.
picture of a cake with multiple layers and how it connects,
Right.
all of a sudden you get acceptance, you get understanding, and you get to move forward. And they go, that's how what I'm trying to do as a business leader, that's how it
Hmm.
works. You start dropping technology terms left and right, you lose people.
So you went to digital strategy, and that's where I wanted to go next because I'm trying to piece together a couple of things that you mentioned. You said that the largest part of a company's project portfolio often is technology related.
Yeah.
I got to believe that, especially now, digital transformation. I mean, it's a term. First off, I'm going to ask you to define digital transformation in a second here, because that's a
Yeah.
term. I mean, every article you read talks about digital transformation, digital
Right.
transformation. And as I talk to people, I'm starting to pick up that it means different things to different people. But talk to me a little bit about, your experience with digital transformation, particularly as it's impacting the insurance industry. And I love the fact that you've already started talking about how you communicate that to the business in terms of the cake, the layers of the cake. But what's the ultimate value proposition? How do you measure it? All of that. Give me a sense of your perspective on DT.
Yeah. So I think there's two ways of digital transformation. Way number
Mm-hmm.
one is, you have your suite of products, right? Are you trying to transform your business into a different digital product? That's
Mm-hmm.
one. Digital
Okay.
transformation for us wasn't that. Digital
Okay.
transformation was how do our customers experience the company digitally?
Sure.
How do
Right.
we enable our clients or customers digitally? But then
Right.
also, so that's the front end, new business, digital experience, et cetera, portals, the whole nine yards. There's the
Mm-hmm.
back end of, claims management,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. Again, experience, customer service in a digital format.
Right.
Then there's the middle. How do you digitally transform the company to operate more in a digital manner, to reduce manual interactions, increase automation, more straight through, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Accelerated underwriting, right? So how do we become faster, right?
Right.
How do we get more business by simply reduce cycle times, right? So to us, digital transformation was in that manner, right? Well, we're not necessarily transforming the company's product lines. We
Right.
believed in our products and we'll add
Right.
products, but it's how we do business with our clients, which was important. And when we undertook it, it was everything under the sun. We definitely started transforming both the experience, the operationalizing, the back end claims management, cybersecurity, even our internals, moving more to agile, moving more to product management, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff is what we defined as digital transformation, and it was massive.
What was in that? What was harder? Would you say? Was it the technology or the people in the process?
People in process.
Of
Yeah, the
course.
people in process. I mean, there's a lot of organizational change management aspects, right?
Right.
With digital transformation, you got to upskill your people. They've been working X amount of years or term one way, and you're saying, we're going to implement a new ERP system as an example, and we have to make you work a different way. Well,
Right.
changing people's hearts and minds, not the easiest thing, right? So not only are you trying to change behavior, you're trying to change hearts, you got to change skill. And you and I both know that you can't just necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater and try to
Mm-hmm.
rehire a full new staff. One, it's inappropriate, but two, that's
Right.
not feasible. So how do you digitally upskill your existing talent while you augment your talent, right? With
Right.
new for diversity of thought, et cetera. It's the people's the number one hard thing to do.
So layering in there, and you've got this need for the upskilling, et cetera. Technology, continues to move at this ever accelerating pace. What are the new technologies that are a influencing digital transformation strategies that you're seeing out there, and then I'd say B, creating or posing the most significant change management challenges that we're not thinking about? What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that from an emerging
Yeah.
technology perspective?
So it wouldn't be an appropriate podcast if we didn't say AI, right? I mean, this day
Right.
and age. So we both know AI is here to stay, right? We also
Mhm.
both know it's in the immature, infantile stages. I mean, the big companies like the Microsofts and Googles, they're leading the way, but the normal firm is still dipping their toe in the water, proof of concepts, figuring it out, right? Governing, et cetera. But AI is definitely here to stay. So better be on top of it, better be trying it out, et cetera, et cetera. But other technologies, I mean, IT leaders are becoming less developers, less builders of systems, and we're integrating, we're orchestrating, right?
Yep.
So cloud still here to stay. It's going to get even more pervasive, right? So
Right.
anything as a service, right? Because our job, we were both in insurance carriers. Our job is to be the best darn insurance carrier known to mankind.
Right.
Technology is enabling that. My job is not
Mhm.
to be the best developer. My job is to build the insurance carrier side. So how am I going to do it? I'm going to integrate and orchestrate with the people who are best of the best with, SaaS products for claims management, underwriting,
Mhm.
the whole nine yards, right? Should I be developing and building it myself? Depends, but that's not my first strategy. My
Right.
first strategy as a technology leader these days is to search, integrate, orchestrate, keep it as simple as possible, keep it as cost effective as possible, get my ROI, and really maximize the benefit to the business, right? Because things are moving extremely fast.
Right.
And the way I look at it is these providers of technology that give us these solutions, they're developing fast, right? They're going to be able to develop fast and build upon it and grow their products at a much faster pace than I could ever do
Sure.
that internally. So I'd rather take that opportunity
Hmm.
and utilize those benefits to my advantage.
I remember, kind of coming up in the industry, I needed to, as a technologist, know as much as I could about core systems and the suites and buying these monolith, kind of massive application suites across
Yeah,
policy, claims, and billing, spend 3 years and multiple millions of dollars implementing them, only to, at the end of that runway, get ready for an upgrade,
that's
or
right.
a pivot as a result of a failed implementation, right?
That's right.
So,
That's
but
right.
what I hear you saying, though, is perhaps there is a pivot away from that full suite mentality, and that we've got to be more adaptable to more best of breed type of deals. Is that what I'm hearing in what you're talking about?
I think it's a combination, right? It's not
Yeah.
100, it can never be 100% solution to go one way or the other. You will still
Okay.
have to build your systems. But yeah, if you could get these massive monolithic systems from these technology providers
Mm-hmm.
who are building solutions in the cloud and they're making them more modular in nature. So you
Mm,
can pick and choose, right?
got
I'll
it.
take your claim systems, but I'm going to choose this billing system over here and we're going to
Right.
API integrate them, right? So not only are you using the cloud because they're in the cloud, but now they're making a modular in nature. And they
Right.
did that because exactly what you're saying, which is this old way of massive monolithic systems where you have to
Right.
update one piece. But guess what? When you update that one piece, you have to update the entire suite. And guess what? It takes you 18 months to do it. And then by
That's
the time
right.
you're done with 18 months, it's end of life. And you got to start
Exactly.
over. And so you never get out of that. You never get out of that, that hole, right? So these providers that have had these massive systems, they're also realizing, hey, let's pivot our solutions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the neat part about this. They're pivoting and they're
Right.
realizing the values because they're getting our feedback. They're getting CIO feedback as to what do we
Sure.
need to be effective. And that's what I see this thing going towards. So the combination, when I said CIOs are becoming and their teams are becoming integrators and orchestrators, so not only using that, using
Mm-hmm.
these systems made by these providers, but then you are also building at times your own, but then you're integrating and you're orchestrating, but keep it smart, keep it modular in nature,
Yep.
right?
Makes sense. How does all of this all work together, given the state? And I'm going to make it a kind of an assumption here, but the state of carrier data and carriers' data's, their infrastructure and their competency around data. How does all of this work when it feels as though we are lacking so much from a data strategy as an industry and an individual carriers that I work with? How does it work?
That was, I would say, our biggest challenge. It all
Okay.
came down to data governance, data quality. Our data was all over the place, right? So how do you bring it all together? I mean, think about it as insurance carriers. You have multiple policy systems.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the nature of the beast, right?
Yep.
There's barely any ROI to migrate to singularity, right? So
Yeah.
how do you bring all that together? So key data strategy. It's critically important that you think about the foundation. Remember
Mm-hmm.
that digital cake I mentioned.
Yeah.
Foundation is not just your infrastructure, your server storage network. It's
That's right.
your data architecture, right? How do you bring it all together? Do you need mastering, right? So you gotta
Mm-hmm.
start with your foundation. Just like any house that you live in, if you don't have a great foundation, it will crumble on you.
That's right.
So CIOs like us that are dealing with decades of legacy, decades of these solutions, you've got to think about what am I doing with my data first so I have singularity of source,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you got to start thinking about not only the singularity of source, two-way, right? So your
That's
CRM
right.
solution, when people are updating it, how do you go back to your policy
Yeah.
keeping systems, your data, right? And update that darn thing. So you don't have different sources inside your company. And that's the key challenge. So you got to really think through your data strategy.
pivot on you here to security, and I want to throw something at you and see if you agree. I'm a cybersecurity attack survivor, to the term, right? And there was a period of time, I want to say over the, from about 2020 maybe to 2023, where everything was all about cyber. And companies were putting the cyber strategy and elevating the CISO, and they're calling out cyber spend, cybersecurity spend. I'm starting to feel as though we're tailing back a little bit, and it's kind of going back into the infrastructure space where it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. Are you sensing that too?
Well, the answer is yes at a certain point, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot, at least in my case.
Yeah.
We did plateau, but because we did exactly what you said, for the first 3 years, we were pumping massive amounts of money in there, and we really,
Okay.
I would say we got to a good spot. Can you get
Oh,
to a good spot in cybersecurity? I don't know. I lived in a paranoid world. That was the one
right.
thing that
Right.
kept me up at night, right? And,
Right.
and you were, like you said, a survivor.
Right.
It's not if, it's when you're going to get hit, right? So maybe what we're seeing is a plateau because of the massive millions of dollars of investment we've done in the past 3 years. And now we're kind of saying we're going to hold steady while we invest over here, right? That
Got
being
it.
said, if you built out a good cyber strategy, feel comfortable, then you could do that. We definitely did. In our cyber strategy, there's no such thing as a perimeter anymore. You and I both know it
Mm-hmm.
with
Right. Right.
IoT, right? So you got to think of, um, a layered approach. And that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at it as like an onion, right? You
Mm-hmm.
had your perimeter defense, you had your geo defenses, you have your vulnerability management, identity access management.
Mm-hmm.
To me, education. Education to your employees is to me the number one thing you got to do. Why? Because you could have all this wonderful technology and process and people, and it takes one click inside an email, and all of a sudden you're doomed, right? So, so not only did I mention all those layers, the layers is also incident response, because like you said, you're a survivor. You better have a good incident response plan. You better have good disaster recovery. You better have good business continuity plans in place because it could happen. You better have good backups, right? Are you
You got it.
thinking about immutable backups that can't get hit by
Right.
ransomware so that if you do get hit, you're not you're not slave to the ransomware
Yeah.
hacker, right? You can
100%.
recover in a reasonable amount of time. So cyber strategies, to your point, I think the investments are starting to plateau a little bit because
Mm-hmm.
of the amazing amounts of focus we've had in the past couple of years. But I still think you're still seeing. I think the average is 7 to 9% of operational budgets are still cyber.
Wow. Yeah.
I think that's the average,
Yep.
um, based on research. I still think you're plateauing there, and
Yep.
companies that are a little behind, or maybe they got hit, they're upping it. But I still
Mm-hmm.
think you're going to stay in that 7 to 9% average, which is immense.
Yeah, I like what you said in there, and it's interesting because prior to the attack that I lived through it, the response element and the recovery element was really not the focus. It was more the prevention,
Mm,
and it's a kind of a little bit of a naive thought process where you're investing all your money in prevention. You're trying to prevent the impossible, right? And then
that's right.
and then essentially it happens and you're not ready. And I like what you said, where and perhaps it's what it is, Jose, is that we've pivoted now to being more adaptable, more recoverable, more resilient, accepting the fact that it's likely going to happen because of that human factor that you just
That's
cannot
right.
solve for 100%. And so if once you get to a point where you've got a good RTO, RPO, you're like, okay, well, this is where we're going to be, and let's just keep testing that. Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
a ton of sense.
yeah, and the elevation, the focus of CISOs to me was
Mm-hmm.
the right thing to do because CISOs aren't just working with the IT leaders; they're working with
Right.
enterprise risk management. They're working with compliance, privacy, legal, right? So you educate those teams on cyber, and all of a
Right.
sudden you have a stronger enterprise,
You got it.
right? And that's the key thing to me.
Let's pivot and talk a little bit about just some of the kind of the soft skills dynamic. One in CIOs, we do a lot of CIO coaching, et cetera. Working with folks. What are some of the soft skills that you think that you've developed as a CIO that has really made you the impactful leader that you've become? What would you share with our audience just as far as things that they should be thinking about and working on?
Yeah, I love that question. I think most CIOs when they get into the role, you've been a relentless driver. You've delivered, right? That's most of us. The key skill that I worked on, listening, listening skills,
Mm,
listening to details,
interesting.
listening, being empathetic to the
Hmm.
business, trying to read between the lines of what they're saying and the why, right? We all have, like I said, we have our needs within technology of, oh, we got to do this because we got to upgrade the system and protect you. And
Sure.
we don't, I've learned to listen and communicate in a way that it's simple and they understand from their point of view. And I
Yeah.
realized along the way that I love technology. I love leading teams. I love what we do and I think it's impactful. But if you don't communicate well and if you don't say that story well, you're not going to come across. You're not going to be
Right.
able to influence. You're not going to be able to move your vision. And at the end of the day, you're also going to hurt the business. Right. So I think listening has been and communicating has been a thing that I've focused on personally, and has made me more effective. And I'm still working on it because, we could all grow and get better.
Yeah. You hit something really interesting. I mean, I'm a big Simon Sinek guy. The power of the why.
Yeah.
His golden circles pieces, and man, to the extent that we get better as technologists, talking about that why in not only terms that our teams understand, but in terms that business understands and business users understand, that it just becomes an incredibly powerful weapon to make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
That
That's
way.
spot on. And you made me think of something else.
Mm-hmm.
The why, the why is curiosity.
Mm.
Right? If you don't
Yeah.
know something, ask the
Right.
why.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Be vulnerable to say, I don't know. And that's something that I've definitely grown into, right? You always want to be
Mm-hmm.
the guy with the answer. It's
Right,
okay to
right,
be
right.
vulnerable, say, I don't know. Say more, say more. And
Yeah.
I think that's a key trait for successful leaders, regardless of technology or non-technology, just successful leaders.
You said one thing. I want to let some of the younger guys off the hook that are listening to this, but you said something that's kind of interesting. I think there's an element of maturity in there, Jose. I mean, it's like, again, I think back to like the gunslinging cowboy I was growing up in technology, where like I knew
Yeah,
the whole thing, but there's a lot of ego, a lot of pride, a lot of
yeah,
youth in there, right? And as you
yeah.
get older, you kind of learn that you don't have to be that forceful with things, and so there's something to the extent that the younger guys can learn that sooner, they become better leaders faster.
That's exactly right. Just say, I don't know, or,
Yeah.
my team failed. We didn't hit the mark, right?
Yep.
We missed the budget, we missed the schedule, and this is why. This is what we learned. Let's adapt it to the next one. And then if you don't know, say, hey, say more to me.
Yep.
Me and my team are trying to learn what's going on. Yeah, I think it's
Love
important.
that. Yeah, love that. Want to pivot to the future, man. And there's a couple of things that are on my radar. One is that obviously technology is moving super fast, and there's going to be all of this new technology that we can take advantage of. Insurance always tends to be a little bit late to the game. But then also too, I'm also watching this talent crisis, or at least what I'm perceiving to be a talent crisis emerging specifically for insurance. It's not a sexy industry. We're not attracting
Yeah.
all the new talent right out of college, right? What do you see on the horizon for insurance in general as it relates to technology and operations? How are we solving these problems? Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the talent gap in insurance particularly is real. But we've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about it for 20 years, right? We've been thinking the cliff event's always 5 years away. That being said, I do think there's a cliff event. One thing I noticed, a lot of COBOL still out there, right? You and I both know
Yeah.
that. One thing I noticed was we pivoted a lot of the COBOL development overseas, to offshore.
Mm-hmm.
And the offshore now is training less, doing less, etc. So the question is, what's going to happen, right? When we don't have those masses of people to be able to manage this environment.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's key for us, right? And you're seeing it more, that digital transformation in the insurance carriers. Got to get on it. Got to
Mm-hmm.
get on it so that we can modernize our platforms to more modern technology, et cetera, while we still work with the offshore partners globally.
Mm-hmm.
Globally, it can't just be India, right? Eastern, Latin America, Egypt, wherever you could get it. Build a
Sure.
team, build the culture, right? And figure out how to bring this talent in. In the meantime, um, start pivoting our technology to simpler,
Mm-hmm.
less duplicity, less redundancy. I think duplicity is the better word, right?
Yeah. Sure.
We want redundancy, but you and I
Right.
both know in our past, we had multiple types of multiple systems. because of the way we were born. We
That's
acquired
right.
systems, we didn't integrate them well, et cetera. So I think you need better integration plans, better modernization plans, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be there's no one size fits all to solve this problem. It's a plus. A plus
Yeah.
B plus C plus D is going to equal the end result. But
Right.
I definitely do think we have a talent shortage for the insurance industry, which is concerning.
My hope, and I think you're onto it, man. My hope is that as we start to modernize and we start to use some more contemporary technology, it won't be so hard, But again, I think the challenge that I've always had as a CIO retaining folks, and even for the cloud stuff, is I would bring on these really talented cloud engineers that are super excited. And then, what we're doing is just basically scratching the surface of what cloud can do.
Yeah.
And then, kind of they're there for a little bit and they get trained up, they learn the full stack, and then they're gone where onto some other startup that is doing all kinds of really cool, crazy, sexy stuff while we're plotting around just our EC2 instances, just kind of like, oh, well, look how cool we are.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're spot on. A lot of times we do lifts and shifts, but we don't do transformations, which is more the exciting
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think we got to couple our internal development of our folks to
Mm-hmm.
give them opportunities like, hey, this is part of your job, but these are the other aspects of technology. We are working on AI and
Right.
robotics and the cool stuff, and giving particularly our young folks straight out of college, early career, give them those opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta couple their job roles so that they're not just stuck in some, old archaic technology. Cause you're right. Even, even the fancy titles of cloud architects, which sounds sexy. Well, if
Yeah.
they're only working on archaic legacy technology and you don't, you don't, sprinkle in some new
Mm-hmm.
stuff, they're gonna leave you. They're gonna leave you.
Got it. Yeah.
So I think also culture is important, right? Not
Yes.
just what they're working on, but where they're working and who they're working with
Mm-hmm.
really matters. Build that culture of innovation, collaboration, fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? Caring, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think people are people. We're all just human beings. And
Yeah.
you want to set a culture where people just want to enjoy coming to work, right? I
You
think
got it.
that's key. That's important.
Talk to me, Jose, about the most, if you can think about it and take a couple seconds if you need to, what was the most impactful moment of your career in insurance? What was that
Mm,
defining event? What would you say it was?
I had a few of them. But I think it was in 2019. I got tapped on
Mm-hmm.
the shoulder, to be CIO.
Okay.
Done a lot in technology, et cetera. Took the roles over at interim. So you know how it is when you're interim, you're gunning for the job.
Right.
Um, got the job in March of 2020. You remember that month?
Mm-hmm. I
Guess what
do.
happened? Guess what happened a week and a half later?
You know what hits the fan, right?
That's right. But from a health perspective, from a humanity perspective, one of the worst things that happened to to the world, COVID. But
Right.
I will tell you, from a teaming perspective, what that did to my team as a new CIO, it brought us together with one mission, one vision, one rally call.
Mm-hmm.
And it built an organization and a team that I would never give up. We were tight.
Mm-hmm.
We had one mission. I don't remember the first 45 days of my job because, we're up all night, 100 hours a week. And in 30
Yep.
days, we took a company that didn't believe you could be digital, right? And work remotely because we were
Yep.
bound to a building. In 30
Yep.
days, everybody's working remotely 100% successfully. So you could imagine the effort it took to do that. But
Sure.
that catalyst is what we needed. We needed a kick in the butt. And we got it. And it's amazing how it brought a team together. And when I look back at it, I'm so proud of my team.
Mm-hmm.
It was a phenomenal undertaking, stressful beyond belief, but pivotal in my career because it allowed me and my leadership team to bond. And that set a culture in place. And it was a gift to me. As a new CIO, that was a
Yeah.
gift to me to be able to do that. I didn't have to make something up, right?
Sure.
Right. It just happened. And, that was pivotal. That was pivotal. But then you have to keep that momentum going.
Jose, you just hit on something. And matter of fact, I did a video, I think it was like a week ago, it published on this topic. And this is the part that kills me. You just said it. When you think about what we had to do and how we mobilized during COVID, it was because there was a why that was so clear. There
Yeah.
was this kind of this existential threat to every corporation in the world. that, if you didn't mobilize, if you didn't do digital, if you didn't make these investments, if you didn't, adapt to the change, you were going out of business.
That's right.
And
That's
for the
right.
life of me, I don't understand why it is that we can't take a similar approach for just for the strategy that ultimately is abating an existential threat to our business. I mean, if we don't digitally transform, we're going
That's
to
right.
go out of business. Why we can't rally around something so powerful like we did for COVID for the next strategy and then execute as flawlessly as we did for that.
I agree wholeheartedly with you. And it's one thing I took away from COVID, which was so powerful, because you reflect and you say, why were we successful? Well,
Yeah.
it's what you just said. We were successful because it wasn't just technology. It was the
Yeah.
entire company working together on one thing. And it was
Mm-hmm.
survival. It was get us going. It was that kick in the pants that the company needed. And then all of a sudden, you took a project, if you want to call it a project. Imagine you did that project without COVID. It would have taken you years.
Right. Right.
It would have taken you years and multi-millions of dollars. But somehow a unified company with one mission was able to do it within 60 days, right? 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember stepping back, going into, the portfolio review meetings, going, how do we adapt that learning to our portfolio? Are we trying to do too much all the time, everything in
Right.
parallel? How about we, reduce 90% of this portfolio and work on only 10% and throw the company at it? And then
Right.
when we're done, we move on to the next thing and the next thing
Yep.
and the next thing. And that way we move fast at a clip. And it's amazing that we learned so much from COVID, but we did not apply to it because you go back into your old routines and
Yes.
everybody has their priorities, individual priorities, right? And I think
Yep.
as a leadership team in any company, take a step back and go look in the rearview mirror. How were you successful, and apply something, a small aspects of that into your portfolio management?
I got to think of a sexy way, Jose, when I'm in my next client meeting to talk about let's recreate COVID. That sounds horrible, right? Because no one
Right.
wants to do that. But
That's right.
what do I come up? I got to coin that in a way in which we got to go back to that type of energy because that's what
Yeah.
we need. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Fantastic. Well, bring us home, man. What kind of parting advice do you have? Again, thinking about our audience, a bunch of, we've got some CIOs, we've got some COOs that are out there. We're all trying to move big, heavy rocks. Sometimes
Yeah.
it feels like we're going up the hill with these rocks and it's just kind of coming down on us. What advice do you have to offer just in terms of keeping those rocks from running you over?
Yeah. Well, be resilient, be patient.
Mm-hmm.
It's a stressful environment. But I would say focus on the people, focus on the
Mm-hmm.
relationships, right? Not only just your staff on their development, et cetera, but you got to get integrated to the business, and you got to remember you're there for the company, the business, not about technology.
Right.
So I think relationships is number one, and it's not just talking, it's building a relationship. Get in the office, break some bread, gas some cup of coffees, right? Remote's here to stay, hybrid's here to
Mm-hmm.
stay, but work
Mm-hmm.
it, particularly with your younger staff, get face to face, right? You got
Yeah.
to build relationships because that's where you're going to move the needle. And again, listen, be empathetic, right? Um, but also at times, you got a responsibility and you see things that people don't see. So
Mm-hmm.
if there's a risk, you got to take a stance, but you
Yeah.
got to communicate it in a way people understand. We're all technologists, so we came from technology backgrounds. We, got to take our propeller hats off, right? And we've got to put our business hats on.
That's right.
So, and the last thing I would say, from a culture perspective is keep it light, no drama,
Yeah.
have fun. Build a fun culture for your people that they love coming to work,
That's key.
right? And that keeps it jazzed up and light because it's a stressful world we live in. And it's fast paced
Mm-hmm.
and it ain't stopping. It ain't
Mm-hmm.
stopping. So keep it light and keep it fun.
I lied. I got to ask you another question, man, because you just threw something out there. What you got to talk to me a little bit about return to office. Where it's in the news. Big companies they're mandating it, and folks are saying much to that company's peril. They're going to force people back in the office. What's your you said a little bit. Remote's here to stay, hybrid's here to stay. How do you manage that blend? What's the right balance there?
Yeah, with everything, the pendulums always swing hard, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then eventually they balance. And I think we're starting to see maybe some pendulums swinging a little harder again, and eventually you get a balance. I honestly believe it's It's a combo. It's a hybrid approach.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that relationships matter. And you and I would not have gotten to our career if we just sat at home behind a TV, because that's what this is. It's a TV,
Yeah.
and just did our career this way. No, we broke bread. We were in people's
Mm-hmm.
offices. People tapped us on the shoulder. We tapped people on the shoulder. We spoke in the hallways. We learned about our children. We learned
Yeah.
about our family together because we built a relationship, and that's important. Do I believe that you have to mandate 100% in the office? No, no, because this reality is we all have heads down time. We need it.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
need time away to do our job and et cetera, et cetera. So I believe it's a balanced hybrid approach.
Sure.
But, if you're a young person listening to this, um, if you just want to work remotely, you're going to suffer in your career. You're not going to go as far. But even if you don't want to go up that ladder, you're not going to build the relationships you need to be successful.
Yeah.
And it won't be as much fun or just joyful for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do believe
meaningful.
in empowering your folks. I believe in autonomy, right? So 100% of the offices make sense to me. I don't need to micromanage my folks. It's a
Right.
results. It's where results are in a game. It's like golf. It's results,
Right.
right?
Right.
But I do believe in development and relationships, et cetera. And I don't believe you can get it behind a TV at all times. So let's balance it.
All right, my brother. Well, I really, really appreciate all the time that you've spent with me
Absolutely.
here. I'm talking about these topics. They're so critical to our industry and to our field and technology. And thank you to my listeners who have joined us here. If you heard something that you like, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. If there's something in particular you'd like to hear, please leave it in the comments and we'll address it in our next show. Until the next time, farewell. Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.